Aloha! Welcome to BishopMuseum's Library and Archives. I'm Hadley Andersen.
And I'm DeSoto Brown, the Bishop Museum historian, and we are here for our Throwback Thursday.
So what are we going to talk about this Thursday?
Well, we're going to talk about recordings. We're going to talk about records. We're going to talk about that whole audio thing.
Oh, see, there's been a resurgence with the vinyl records lately. At least my brother told me so.
Well, no, that's true. That's true. But while there is sort of a niche market for actual records, recordings these days, they're pretty much they're very small in comparison to what they used to be.
Right.
Because it used to be that, unlike today, if you wanted to buy a record, if you wanted to listen to something at home, you had to go to a store and buy a record. And you didn't just download it, so it was quite a different situation. And that may sound silly for those of us who are old and remember going to record stores like me, but there was a time when that happened, and now it's all changed.
I was in the age of cassette tapes.
Cassette tapes, well, there we go.
CDs.
CDs.
So we did
Well,
still have to go buy stuff.
that's true. No, but you're right. And see, those are different technologies, but that whole retail thing has changed a great deal. Anyway, there was a time that you had to buy a recording on some sort of physical format. And the first recording technology that came on the market was in the 1870s, and it was from the Thomas Edison Company. And the Edison Company manufactured cylinders. Those are cylinder recordings, are a tube about like that around. And when they first were marketed, they were intended for people to do dictation, like a executive. So he could sit there and say, Ms. Anderson, please take a letter to DeSoto Brown and say this, this, and this, and then you could go and listen to it later and type it. Well, what they figured out by about 1900 was it makes more sense to put songs and music on these recordings, and that's what people will buy, and that's what happened.
So these wax cylinders that Edison had created, were they very durable?
They actually were quite durable, and they worked pretty well. Actually, their audio quality for the time was quite good, but the problem was that Edison didn't license the technology to any other company, and he said, only I can make Edison recordings. So other people came in and said, okay, well, we'll change the technology and we'll change the format, and they went from cylinders to discs. And the advantage in discs was that you could have 2 songs per recording. A cylinder could just have 1, but a disc could have a song on either side.
So 2 songs for the price of 1.
2 for the price of 1, and so that's what the technology. That was the winning technology at the time. So from the early 1900s on, up until the 1950s, most people had record players in their homes, and they listened to what were called 78s. Those are 10-inch discs that turned at 78 revolutions per minute, and they were very breakable, and they could scratch and crack and all kinds of things. And they were always scratchy sound. But that's all there was. In the late 1940s, there was a shift to 2 new technologies. That was the 7-inch 45 RPM disc and the 12-inch 33 1/3 disc, and that was even better because it was an LP, long playing, multiple songs per side. So then you had a whole album at one time.
So that was the revolutions per minute, and slowing it down allowed you to have more.
Correct. And actually, the material that the recordings were made out of got superior too. So you used the word vinyl earlier.
Yeah.
Vinyl was only used for 45s and LPs, never 78s. Vinyl is much better. It's much smoother. It doesn't have as much crackling noises, etc. But anyway, so what we're going to look at right now are labels of 78 RPM discs that are of Hawaiian music. Okay, so this first one,
Honolulu Honey.
Honolulu Honey. Okay, this is from the Victor Record Company, and Victor and Columbia were the 2 major competing companies that I mentioned earlier that went into competition with Edison in the early 1900s, and those were the 2 winners. They were the ones that were the big boys that dominated the industry for a long time. So this record here is probably from about 1915, 1920, and even though it's called Honolulu Honey, it wasn't actually recorded here, and the artists are Charles Hart and Elliott Shaw. Well, they're not local guys. That's just a popular song that was called Honolulu. And then this one,
The Hula Blues, Foxtrot, played by Ted Lewis Jazz Band.
Okay, well this is Columbia, so that's the other major company. And Hula Blues was a song that was written by a local composer named Johnny Noble. He was also a songwriter and song publisher. His song was quite popular, and as you can see by this, Ted Lewis Jazz Band is not local. Ted Lewis, in fact, was a very popular jazz band in the entire United States. So it shows you that Hawaiian-themed music had spread all over the place.
Medley of Hulas, Kalama's Quartet.
Well, now these people really are Hawaiian. Kalama's Quartet really was a group of Hawaiian performers, but this was recorded on the mainland, and the brand name is OK. But then, as you can see under it, there's the word electric. Now, why do you think they had to put the word electric on the record label?
I think it's because they used to have to hand crank their record players.
Well, they did used to have to hand crank their record players because eventually they became electric. But the reason the label says that is because the recording was done electrically, not that you played it electrically. So up until that point, when you went into a recording studio, you just sang or spoke or played your instrument into sort of a reversed megaphone, and the sound vibrations, the sound waves, are what just of themselves made the recording happen. When in 1926 they shifted to using actual microphones with wires that amplified sound, and that improved the sound quality tremendously. So all of the record companies at that time were proud to say, hey, we're doing electric records.
Right. Honolulu Harbor, John Noble's Hawaiians.
Yeah, so Johnny Noble, the guy I mentioned earlier, in 1929 he was responsible for putting together a whole bunch of different Hawaiian performers to be recorded by the Brunswick label here in Honolulu. So they recorded a lot of this stuff. It was released nationally, but with Hawaiian artists recorded here. And they all say Johnny Noble's Hawaiians, even though they were all different types of performers. They just were given that generic catch-all title.
Ah, okay.
Okay. This is historically really important.
Sweet Leilani.
Okay.
By Bing Crosby.
By Bing Crosby. Okay. 1934, the Decca Record Company started, and they really became popular partly because they signed Bing Crosby, because he was a hugely popular singer in the 30s. But in 1937, Bing appeared in a movie that was called Waikiki Wedding, and he sang this song in that film, Sweet Leilani. This particular record became a tremendous hit nationally. It really made the Decca Record Company successful. It also really is credited as bringing the entire recording industry out of the effects of the Depression in the 1930s, because it was such a big seller. And that song won the Oscar that year for Best Song in Film.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Read that title.
I had to lava and leva the lava on the
There we go. Okay. Here's a record also from the late 1930s, and they just put this in here because of the quirky title. I had to lava and leva on the lava. The lava was on the slopes of Haleakala, and this was the kid from HULA who did the hottest hula I've never ever known on Haleakala.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? Yeah.
Hula Cop Hop.
Okay, here's a 50s record by the Decca Record Company. It's called The Hula Cop Hop, sung by Sterling Mossman. Sterling Mossman was an extremely popular performer in the 50s and 60s, and he was at a nightclub and restaurant in Waikiki called Queen's Surf. And he started out his career actually as an actual policeman. And then because he was a musician, he eventually sort of segued into being a full-time performer, and this is a comedy song written for him, like he's the hula cop.
Oh, gosh.
Because he performs and he does the hula.
Okay, Hawaii, I'm yearning.
Okay, well this one is in here not so much for the song or the title, but this is the first local record company. It was called Hawaiian Transcription Productions, or HTP, started in 1936. And it was kind of an offshoot of one of the two radio stations in Honolulu at that time, which was KGU, the other was KGMB. They both went on the air in 1922, and KGU, you had to make recordings for use on the radio at that time. They didn't have magnetic tape yet. That was the only way to make a copy of something. So they had to make actual discs. And so because they were already doing that, they turned this into a company, and they sold records commercially. So that's kind of cool because it means that we were starting to record our own people here.
Hilo Hanakahi.
Well, Hilo Hanakahi is the name of it, but the point is that at the top it says, and this is also from that same record company, it says the Voice of Hawaii KGU radio artists. So that's just showing you that it's a plug for KGU, and it's also, again, the local record company. So that's a cool step. This is just here because I think it's such a wonderful design.
That's a really great design. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is from the late 40s, maybe about 1950, and it's got this wonderful design of a surfer and the wonderful logo type of Aloha written in script. And it's kind of cool because the song is called Right On. And that was a slang expression here even in the 1940s, which didn't become popular nationally until the 1960s.
Right.
And so there's this guy who works here who says it all the time, Nicholas Griffin. Yeah.
He's our cameraman.
He's our cameraman, yes, yes.
All right. Island Recording Studio, Sophisticated Hula.
Sophisticated Hula. That just is a song that I really like. But again, this is just an example of another local record company from the 1950s. And you see that record labels were actually artistically very interesting. That's why I want you to see them, because it's not just the information on the label, but it's also how did they choose to make their label look pretty and make it look attractive. So you might think of buying it just because it attracts your attention.
Bell Records. And it's the Ghost Dance on Punchbowl.
All right, you're puzzled by that, and that's understandable. The two major, the successful local record companies in the 1950s were Bell Records and the 49th State Company, which we're about to get to. And the strange title of this record, The Ghost Dance on Punchbowl, you think most of these are songs, most of them are music. No, this is a story. This was published, these were done in the middle 1940s, and they were done by a man named Eric Knudsen, who was from Kauai, born and raised, born in the 19th century. He knew a lot of Hawaiian stories, Hawaiian tales, and in the middle 1940s he went on the radio and told these old stories, Hawaiian traditional stories, and then he made recordings of them too. So the Ghost Dance on Punchbowl is actually a Hawaiian story, not a song.
Another Bell Records.
Yeah.
Mahalo, My Darling.
Mahalo, My Darling. I put this in because, again, I just mentioned how labels needed to look nice because you wanted people to see a nice product when they were buying your stuff. And if you look right here, that's the same logo that's used by the Hawaii Visitors Bureau for the directional signs.
Yes.
So when you drive around, you see these directional signs or scenic location signs, and they use that same warrior design, which Bell Records obviously proving to use for its own stuff. Mm-hmm. And finally, here's a puzzler.
Ooh, the 49th State Hawaii Record Company.
So you're now thinking, why is this company called the 49th State? Because Hawaii is the 50th state. And yet it has a map of Hawaii, and at the bottom it says Hawaii, the 49th state. You don't know why.
Were they trying to get it to be the 49th
yes,
state?
Yes. No, you're exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
There were 48 states from 1912 onwards, and for many, many decades, Hawaii was trying to become a state for political reasons, which finally happened in 1959. But before we got to be a state, Alaska became a state the year before, and they became the 49th state. Well, starting in the late 40s, there was a lot of optimism. Hawaii was definitely going to be a state really soon, and we're going to be the 49th state. So this record company was so optimistic, they said, we'll just call it the 49th State Record Company in anticipation of that happening. It did not happen.
Sadly, no.
It didn't happen, and so they were stuck with kind of a funny name. But by the time Hawaii became a state, they were kind of tapering off. So anyway, okay, folks. Well, that is our Throwback Thursday for today, and we urge you
to visit our website, www.bishopmuseum.org.
Because we're always doing a lot of exciting and interesting things here at Bishop Museum, and we also understand that if you like these broadcasts and want to support them, or you want to support Bishop Museum in general.
Yes, you can. There's a donate button on our Facebook page, so please support the museum, support our little video cast that we have.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week for another Throwback Thursday.
Aloha.